Alright guys, and welcome to the video. This video is inspired by Tony To's Can You Hit 5 million damage on Eula video. And basically I did the same thing, but instead of a C6 fully maxed out Eula with like Wolf Gripstone support, all that whaley stuff, I tried to do calculations for a C0 Eula for really endgame high luck free to plays and light spenders. And instead of going into floor 7, I'm going to be calculating Eula's damage in the overworld. I have a floor 7 calculation, but that will be at the very end of the video, because this video's main focus is going to be Eula in the overworld, and of course we're going to fight against Fatui bosses, because they have negative 20% physical resistance, and they're basically the only enemies that can actually survive Eula long enough for Eula to actually do her setup. Because when their shields are up, they're going to have a lot of damage reduction, and that's going to be what you're going to utilize. And if you time it correctly, then you can actually break the shield just as you're going to use the ult. And yeah, basically the only thing that would actually survive Eula in the overworld is probably these Fatui bosses and Rune Guards, but Rune Guards have high physical resistance, so we're not going to deal with those guys. Now, first off, the reason I said really endgame is because I'm going C0 Eula, but I'm assuming you have ult level 10 with 15 stacks. You could probably actually get 16 to 17 stacks with the new Claymore's attack speed buff. However, I'll go 15 stacks just to be safe. That results to around 2,949% total ult damage. And the second part of the team is C5 Bennett with level 11 ult. Because if you have C5 Bennett, then level 11 ult is easy, because all you need to do is get Bennett to level 8 ult, and then the C5 adds an extra 3. That's why I put level 11. And Alley Flash. For those of you who don't know what Alley Flash is this sword right here, which I believe was in the Elegy of the End weapon banner. And it currently has the highest base attack out of any 4-star weapon in the game. And it's a sword, so Bennett can use it. And 620 attack is extremely high, because for reference, the highest attack stat sword in the game, Aquila Favonia, has 674 attack, which is only actually 54 away from Alley Flash. So if you have Alley Flash, it's a really good choice for your Bennett. If you don't have Alley Flash, then Prototype Rancor is also a valid option, because Prototype Rancor isn't that far away from Alley Flash either, because it has 565 attack at level 90, and it's a free weapon. But since we're going like very endgame free to play / light spender here, I'm going to use Alley Flash in this calculation. And I chose Alley Flash because it's a 4-star, and I don't want to choose 5 stars because 5 stars are a lot rarer than an Alley Flash that's a 4-star. Next, I'm also running C4 Sinyan, because Sinyan has 15% increased physical damage on her E, and her C4 specifically does have minus 15% extra physical resistance, so that will help with damage as well. And now Lisa here. Lisa is here for 2 reasons. Lisa's ult reduces enemies' defense by 15%, which is basically our budget version of reducing defense. Since based on our criteria here, most of the people who fit in this criteria probably do not have Klee C2, because a C1 or above 5-star is very expensive. So we're going to use Lisa here, and we're also using TTDOS R5. TTDOS is basically this weapon where you switch to another character and they get a certain amount of attack percent. At Refinement 5, this book gives 48% attack to whatever character you switch to. And the weapon that we're using here is Song of Broken Pines, Refinement 1, the new Claymore. Alright, so let's get into the first part. Eula's total attack. Now Eula's base attack is 342, and the Song of Broken Pines base attack is 741 and 20% physical damage bonus. So in total, she has 1,083 attacks so far. Now, artifacts. Now, of course, there are artifact main stats. 311 attack from the feather is fixed. 46.6% attack is from the hourglass. 58.3% physical damage from the goblet. And 62.2% crit damage as the helmet. And as for the artifact substats, I'm going to use mine because technically I'm a very low light spender, because I've spent around $200 in this game so far. And now artifact substats. I'm using my 4-piece Pale Flame current artifact substat, and this is around what my artifact substat for my 4-piece Pale Flame set is. So I used my artifact substats, which were 75 flat attack, 32.1% attack, and 44.6% crit damage. And now let's talk about the extra buff that we're getting for attack. So first off, we get 20% attack from Noblesse, because we're going to put 4 set Noblesse on Bennett. We get 20% from Tenacity of the Millilith, which I'm not exactly sure if it's going to work, because I'm thinking of putting it on Xinyan, and Tony To said it works, so I'll believe him. And from this Bennett ult, which is level 11 with a level 90 ally flash, and Bennett himself is level 90, you get 1127 attack from Bennett's ult. You get 48% attack from Lisa's TTDOS here. You get 25% from the Pyro Resonance, because Bennett and Xinyan are both Pyro. And then you get 36% attack from Song of Broken Pines passive. And then you get an extra 18% attack from the 4-set Pale Flame. So combining all this attack together, we get 5,257 attack as our Eula's attack, which already is really high. That is easily Hu Tao levels of attack. Now, crit damage. The base crit damage combined with my artifact crit damage is around 156.8% crit damage, because I added the 50 base crit that every character has, and then I added the 62.2% crit damage, and then the 44.6% crit damage. That's how I got my 156.8%, and Eula also scales with 38.4% as she levels. So the total crit damage she will have in the overworld is 195.2%. If you're in floor 7, you simply add 120, but this is an overworld calculation, so we're going with just 195.2% crit damage. Now, physical damage percent. So 4-piece Pale Flame gives 50% physical damage. The Refinement 1 Broken Pine substat gives 20.7% physical damage. Xinyan gives an extra 15% physical damage. And then our Artifact Goblet, which is physical damage bonus, as you can see here, gives 58.3%. Combining all of this, we get a total of 144% total physical damage. And now resistance. Now first off, we're finding the Fatui Skirmishers, which their resistance to physical is already minus 20%. And since it's already under 0% resistance, every other resistance factor is cut in half due to how resistance is calculated. Now here's Superconduct. Superconduct is 40%, which means it actually works as 20% reduced resistance. And Eula's E at talent level 8 reduces physical resistance by 23%, which turns out to be 11.5%. And Xinyan C4 also reduces physical resistance by 15%, which actually turns out to be 7.5%. So in total, the Fatui Skirmisher that you're fighting actually has a minus 59% resistance to physical damage. So now if we look at our stat totals here, Eula's total attack is 5,257 attack. Her crit damage is 195.2%. Her physical damage is 144%, excuse me. And the enemy level is level 91, of course, because we are in the overworld. And if you can get your Eula to this level, you're most likely AR55, which is world level 8. And the enemy will be level 91. And their resistance to physical will be negative 59%. And Lisa's minus 15% defense on her ult is also a variable here. So, now if we scroll down, we will see how much damage Eula's ult does in the overworld with this setup. 779,772 damage on ult. That's actually a really pretty number. There's 4 sevens. This is the calculator for it. You can really tell I was inspired by Tony To because I'm also using the same calculator as him. 179,772. A really pretty number. And now before I get into Eula's final damage here a bit more, I'll also show you the damage for floor 7, because although the point of this video is not floor 7, I assume a lot of you have seen Tony To's video, and if I give you a floor 7 number, it also makes it a lot easier for you to compare C0 Eula with a high-end free-to-play team, with C6 Eula with a super whale team. So floor 7 gives a lot. It gives 120% extra crit damage. You can get Elemental Burst buff plus 20% 3 times ideal. And the enemies are level 65 instead of level 91. So there's a lot less defense on the enemies. So with floor 7, this is the damage that Eula can get. 1,457,888. I'm noticing really pretty numbers with Eula here, which is really cool and all because I think Eula is super pretty. But back to the point. Yep, this is the calculator I used here. And this was the result. And yes, it is a humongous difference from Tony To's 5 million, but it's to be expected because of how Eula's ult works. So after seeing these damage numbers, what are my conclusions? I think this damage number is actually extremely high for high-end / light spenders, because if you are a high-end free-to-play player or a light spender, when was the last time you even thought that you could do 780k in the overworld? Basically, unless you were extremely lucky with Mona, never. if you actually compare this to the majority of the game, this is an extremely high number to do in the overworld, 779,772 damage. But the main issue with this is even though the damage is actually extremely high for high-end free-to-play standards, the setup is quite difficult and sometimes you're not going to get it off fully. So that's really the only flaw. But aside from that, Eula for most of us players is nowhere near the 5 million because we can only get half the stacks. Because to really get past this 16 stack wall, you need Eula C6. And Eula C6 is why there is such a big difference. When you get Eula C6, you get from 15 stacks, you go to 30 stacks, which basically doubles your damage. And her C1 and C4 also give a ton of physical damage as well. So that's mainly where the damage difference comes from. But still, C0, Eula is still one of the hardest hitting characters in the game. Everything here is achievable by free-to-play players. Everything here is indeed achievable as long as you're a super high-end free-to-play player or a light spender. And you're able to do this much damage, which actually is pretty crazy to think about. Whereas to do this kind of damage with, let's say Mona or Hu Tao, you're going to need much more ideal artifacts, and your surrounding team members are going to have to start getting into whale territory. Like, for example, Bennett here is still achievable, but if you buff Bennett basically any more than this, he becomes a whale variation of Bennett. The big flaw with Eula is that this takes a lot of time to set up, although in my opinion, I think this is actually worth it to set up because the damage is so high that you're most likely going to almost one-shot any enemy anyway, which in the end actually saves you more time because the enemy is basically already dead after your combo. Whereas as other combos, they're a lot more consistent, but you need to perform them multiple times. Whereas Eula's, it's like Child, where you get her ult set up once, and in Abyss, you get ult immediately, so that's completely possible, and then the enemies are basically dead. So for this reason, I think in the current meta, Eula is going to be absolutely absurd and just destroy everything. But in the long term, she may suffer a bit as enemies get more HP. But yeah, that's about it. I hope you guys found this video helpful. Please subscribe if you did, and I'll see you guys next time.